Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the World of Sasquatch. Today was more of an impromptu session per Joanna's request for assistance from anybody benevolent, but also the forest people. And Scrumpy down here, this guy, who was with us in Washington as a scout. I don't know if he's the one that's going to speak for all of them today, or if he's just making it possible for the rest to talk. For the rest to listen. So, you're not just a scout, you're actually able to transverse a conversation the same as the rest of them. Yes? And if people make an edifice or have an edifice like that, you can have a forest person talk through it, you're saying? They prefer the shungite. Okay. It's a great filter. The Lyrans are the same way. It can act as an absolute filter for them. That's why they were able to talk.
And I think what you mean is it hides them a bit.
It masks them, yeah.
Because when we were, just as a reminder, when we were up in Washington State and we had some edifices that were contaminated, and we brought them up, but we brought them up in shungite, and that was, reminding people, that was the one thing said about the forest people. If you feel strongly you need to, for the protection of yourself and others, get rid of something, you can. But if you can put it with shungite, that would be better, because what's in those edifices could be screaming and yelling and trying to get attention, and the shungite masks them. It doesn't allow it. So in reverse, on a positive side, for some of these species that are more hunted, if you do something like this, it makes it harder for them to be found.
Yes, and there are some available we still have that look like him as well, so that have the shungite in them. So let me see here. Scrumpy, so you're going to be doing the talking today? Yeah, okay. Well, that's a first. All right.
So I guess let me explain where this is coming from. So we're having, we're calling it the World of Sasquatch, but in all honesty, it's actually requesting advice and wisdom from the Sasquatch people on a better understanding of what I kind of refer to as the layers of deception. The one thing that Chris and I have been exposed to and have been learning is that there's more, and I don't want to. This isn't to say that this will never be ending, we'll never control things. No, it's if we believe that concept, we wouldn't even be talking. We would be partying, indulging, and trying to have the best life possible, because it's all kind of shit in the background. But that's not what we believe. We believe there's skills that humanity and humans will be learning. They'll gain better control, and they'll be able to maneuver through it and see it, and see some of these layers that will be important to discern through. So this conversation is talking more about layers of the deception, layers of programming, layers of things, and gaining the skills to discern through it and to understand it, so that you have a better handle on your life and the world around you. So interesting things have happened over the last few weeks. Oftentimes the guides will give two words or do something, and what has happened to us over the years is that those two words added to something else going on over here, and this is again a quantum way of thinking. So somebody says two words here, and then something happens in your sphere. If you think about the sphere of the world around you over here, and you get this, and then something happens here, and you start to feel there's a connection coming through, but it's not linear. It doesn't make sense. It's just a piece over here, a piece over there, a piece over there. And in our current situation, instead of necessarily having a direct linear conversation about stuff, that would be considered a violation, and negativity scans for that. Oftentimes what happens is you have a little piece over here, a little piece over there, and then when you get to the point of having enough in your head, you can have a conversation because something's come into your mind, and that's not considered a violation, and the good guys can start participating in these better understandings. So kind of that's what's been going on. So I bring this up because some of the important components that were completely unrelated, just coming in here or coming in there. One of them was a dream, a lucid dream sequence that I had where I felt like I was being shown the process of programming. You know, an understanding of how it's done, how people's, and I guess we'll call it psyche or their emotional body, how it is utilized to someone else's advantage versus your own. So what I was actually shown, if you can think about it, I guess the best way to say is think of a stack of pancakes, and each layer represented a different emotion. So maybe some of you guys have seen in the medical world the how are you feeling today, and you've got this big pictogram of a lot of faces. One is anger, one is happy, one is sad, one is jealous, one is I can't remember some of the others right now, but I think you guys get the thing. It's just this pictogram with tons of different pictures. One is calm, one is okay. So trying to now envision that into the ability of somebody to take your emotional psychic body and stretch it out, and they may go in and play and you know, I don't know all the details. I would imagine what they would probably do is individualize, putting you into dream sequences or whatever to see how you react within that particular layer, and then which layer can they actually manipulate again for their advantage. And that would even include layers of happiness, because you know, being stuck in only wanting happiness and not wanting to entertain a difficult discussion or not wanting your bubble to be burst or whatever, that actually, believe it or not, can be manipulated. You could have been manipulated to be in that state, and it stagnates you just as much as you are if you are someone who stays in constant fear or easily put into fear or easily put into anger. You know, that can stagnate just as much. So I think I was shown this sequencing, and literally in the dream someone was describing it to me, the sequencing of events of what actually occurs. Now I didn't get the level of detail, nor do I think it is necessary to go into the nitty-gritty to see what does that mean someone's lying down, do they have probes in their brain. It's not necessary. Okay, sometimes we get caught up in the minutia of something, and what you just need to get is the brushstroke concept, and you don't have to have the levels of that kind of detail. And I don't care to know. I don't care to know the torturous events that people went through or are still going through for them to do this procedure. I actually don't. I sense it's bad. I sense it's not good. I don't need to see it. A guy came in, actually it was kind of the next day, and I just wanted to validate, was that real? I feel it was real. I feel I was being shown something real, and it's important to understand, but I always like to validate and tell Chris and try to validate, you know, I wasn't being messed with, right? This is real, this is relevant, this is important. And I did get a validation that there was really, I was being shown something. And then several days later go by, and something again, totally random. One little teeny sculpture piece that Chris has made, very tiny little skull, and he brought it home, and he noticed there was a ding in the back of the neck of it. And if I'm saying this correctly, and then someone piped up and said, that's not a mistake, that's important.
Yes, this little skull has a little hole or break in the back end of it, which would be back here on the back of the skull. And it's a little shungite one that I made that the Lyrans were using it to speak on the Interstellar Council. And they not only was the shungite pointing this out, very much like if you had a tarot reading and the cards reflect certain energy states that you're in. The shungite can do that as well. Before any Lyran inhabited this, the shungite basically was reflecting back at me, or the earth was also reflecting back at me a problem. And it was pointing to an exact spot, which is where some of the programming and a lot of the suppressed memories that people have exist is right here by the brainstem. And this has always been an issue on this side, and on the skull there is a crack right in that spot, and underneath it's like a hole where the spinal column would be for a skull.
So that happened days later, completely separately, and you were kind of talking about it nonchalantly. For me, it was in my head. There's a relationship, okay? There's a relationship, between this, and then Chris and I, this part of what you don't see is when Chris and I challenge ourselves and challenge each other to understand something more. So when we may do that, for each other, if Chris thinks that he's noticed, let's say, a pattern of a program in me, okay, or vice versa, let's just say that, or you're not, or maybe not seeing something clearly, we have a tendency to want to go there, to push each other, to rub a sore spot, let's say. And it isn't easy. Sometimes you would think that now we're fighting, because it happens when you run up to something that is hitting close to home, let's say, or maybe you're ready to discuss it, or maybe you're not. There's going to be a bit of an aversion to it. Luckily for us, we find a way to still persevere through it. It may take several days and more clarity on our part to come back to have conversations, more information, but we push each other that way, and I think it's part of the reason we kind of don't let each other get a little lazy, because we keep pushing each other, as well as trying to bring in more information. And I do believe that it's been said before on many of the channelings that Chris can bring in information up to his level of understanding, but you've heard plenty of guys and plenty of people say this is all we can talk about right now, because this is your current understanding. When you currently grow and understand and learn more, then the conversation can expand.
Exactly. When it comes to any topic, if I don't completely understand the topic, they have to use terminology I already know. They have to use terminology that's out there already, until I expand the conversation, or expand the knowing a little bit. Then they can have more of an expanded conversation. That's how it is with all guides. It's not just the forest people.
No, it is. It's and what we're talking about is in everyone's life. This is not something related to us. You are going to perceive what's going on around you. You're going to perceive even bringing in your past lives. You're going to perceive everything related to your mind at the current present moment of what it is and what its current understanding is. That's the only way it can be done. You can't magically expand the knowledge base that is here to totally see. That's that epiphany, that enormous epiphany. It just doesn't occur that way. You can blow your brain out so you perceive things the way you perceive them. You grow, you change, you can perceive things a little bit bigger. So what also happens around here at times is that if Chris is bombarded with all kinds of things all the time, trying to pick what am I going to deal with at this current present moment, or what subject am I going to learn about now, or this, that, and the other. He's human, and it can get overwhelming. And there are times when if the guides or whatever feel like maybe he is should be looking at something here, but he's either focused over here or he just doesn't want to deal. There's times where you just don't want to deal with this, and they tend to come to me, right? So they'll come over to me and they'll put a little something under my craw, because they know that I am going to, even there's going to become a point where it's even too much in my own head, and I'm going to bring it up. So that actually happened this week as well. This is where now I want to expand the conversation, and I'm hoping we can get some assistance, because there is an interesting thing that occurs that and this occurs in your lives as well. You've seen this, you're going to recognize this, where you're trying to have a heartfelt conversation about something you feel is very important, and with the dialogue that's coming back, it's like they're not hearing what you're saying. So it's like, and I remember, in several conversations I've said it before, but now there's something unlike I think we're supposed to learn about this, where it's like I would say, you're not hearing me. There could be, words that are coming out are not mirroring what I was saying. Like the conversation is taking a skew, and I'm like, that's not even what I'm trying to say. You're not hearing me. And of course, obviously, when you say to somebody, you're not hearing me, and they feel, that, and they're a bit in a state of maybe not wanting to talk or not wanting whatever, it actually can build them up a little bit to be even a little bit more resistant to a conversation. So what I thought is that the possibility that all of the above is actually related. And there's a piece of the conversation that came to me that I don't know is true. So this is where, again, luckily my call was asked to have a conversation, a better understanding. I do not know if my theories are accurate or, again, skewed because of where the level of knowledge that's in my mind, and there needs to be clarification. But I thought, it's an interesting thing when you talk about the layers and the pancake layers, and what may work on somebody won't work on somebody else. So, for example, shame, blame, guilt, fear seem to be a top dynamic of where they can get people controlled a little bit more, or get them into those states so that they're stagnating or whatever. But there's many other layers as well, like I mentioned happiness before. And then it dawned on me, what if there's actually even something else? Is there a possibility that programming can be done to cause someone to gravitate towards a certain frequency and not give as much to another frequency? And so I thought there may be more to this than what I'm thinking, and it's all relevant, and it's all about this. So that's why I asked, because I feel we're coming to the head of something that really needs to be learned about and discussed, and that's part of the conversation I was hoping to have. So I've tried my best to lay it all out there, and my concerns, and why was that programming issue of the back of Chris's neck brought up, And again, this is not just related to us, this is related to everyone. So I am asking, can there be some clarification on some of the things that I brought up? Is there a relationship? Is there validity to these concepts? Is it another layering that we're learning about now? And so I just turn the floor over.
Okay. Put him there. There we go. Okay. Scrumpy, you can anytime. It's slightly more difficult for him to do this. Scrumpy. Yes, indeed, your assertion of current events is accurate to within a close degree. There are, as you would say, onion layers of programming and onion layers of deceptive implantation active. This is why we are speaking through this edifice. This makes it safer for our kind to filter even through targeted individuals, even though we have said put that in the past, and that is still most valid. There are things that have to be taken care of in the moment. Then they can be put to the past. But always refer to yourself not as targeted in the present, but in the past, as we've said. I am here to facilitate this dialogue in times of this. The Sasquatch or forest people family that you all are familiar with wished this type of conversation because they wanted to continue the dialogue even in times of duress. Yes, they have been around physically, but as you say, there are timed ailments, timed programming bits, very much like how this one he would refer to as a Christmas light display or a timed light display of some sort. Think of etheric implants, programming, and physical implants in that same category, where they can be timed for a particular energy, where they can also summon particular beings at particular times to bring in and accentuate and augment particular programming threads. Some in sexual respects, some in belligerent and aggressive respects, sometimes a combination of the two, and sometimes in knowledge respects and infiltrating with particular points of knowing that have the what you would call the yield implemented in, or the agenda of the individual. Sometimes particular humans are summoned in particular times of need for the programming to continue, even if that particular human or set of humans may be innocent. There is an accentuated programming in. I'm not referring to any one individual. This is a universal concept that this happens. And as you all of you plow through the different levels of programming, out comes another to be corrected, even if it is in memory form or if memories are being used against you in some respect. This was part of it, part of the many layers of this deception and many layers of the programming. Think of plan A, plan B, plan C. They can go through the whole alphabet 3 or 4 times before some people notice all the levels of it. They do not like when even one layer of deception and one layer of programming is defeated, let alone the amounts of you have done. Forgive the distractions. This is another way they keep things buried, by allowing for distractions or creating distractions amongst your own people and devices. This is a form of programming they have always used to divide you from your own self-work and worth in times, to put you in a place where you do not belong. And thinking they have divided you, they will continue to harass. But when you find a workaround around the program divisions, the divisions don't exist any longer. But still, when a device or set of programming is implemented, it must be, you would say, knocked down, or the wall must be knocked down. With the amount of beings that have been around you all here, and with any channeler, anyone that has been declared targeted, there will be these blowbacks from time to time. Not that we are saying create it, we are saying protect against it. We are saying the quicker you can be decisive enough to undo the old ties that bind, the quicker you can knock the wall down. Yes, it is easier to communicate through synchronicities, such as the small skull and its reflection. It's much easier to communicate in such ways if the person is cunning enough to recognize the signs and symbols when they appear and read them for what they are. In this moment, I'm open to questions.
So, I've spoken about this before, more in private than actually on camera. I think I am, because of I think I was meant to be this way coming into now, maybe as a balance to other things that Chris has within him. But I seem to be programmed to be looking for patterns, and I seem to be, I don't mean programmed in a bad way, I actually think it's a good thing. I seem to be always looking for patterns. I seem to be always looking for incongruencies. And I am suspicious by nature, I feel. Not that I am not kind. I love everybody. I actually care. But that seems to be a part of my character that I actually, unless it's not in balance, I actually don't feel it's a bad place for people to be, because they've got to notice these things. So I'm just curious about a conversation regarding people that maybe feel that's a wrong way to be. How do you balance that within your life to help you see these clues?
For one, questioning everything is a great way to be, instead of being what you would call a yes person. Be sovereign and be you. However, you also need to surrender to the flow of things. Flow of the great river, you would say, of events leading you to the places you're supposed to be. Not the false, deceptive ones. Not the false, deceptive places that you have been drawn to as of late. To where the other end of the spectrum, let's just say, needed you for particular parts. But surrendering to the real benevolent flow of not only benevolent source, but to where you are supposed to be. Do not be misled by voices wishing to take you to distant lands and areas that you do not belong. We are not saying most of what you have experienced, only part of what you've experienced. Say the dangers that were in Washington State, for instance, the ones we helped repel you from. These states were not being seen to enough as suspicious versus wondrous. We're not saying that our kingdom there is not wondrous. It is. And we would have welcomed your presence there, within that we would consider sacred place. But there were unforeseen dangers there that you were suspicious of. He was not. But also the request to protect for your highest good was put out there. And so it was enacted. Even if there were variances that were encroaching on our, you would say, kingdom or realm, there were still mostly aspects that needed to be seen, deception layers that needed to be revealed, which are, even if he is not prevalent to this, are being disassembled. The areas that you are meant to be in will be revealed to you at the times they are meant to, not before. Yes, pre-planning in the moment is always a great thing, but also mixed with the fact that not only are you making goals and planting your flag, so to speak, which you are indeed doing, and fighting past all the, you would say, discombobulation of the AI and reptilians and such. I will not go into that part. But surrendering to the flow of change. This can also cause discombobulation if one is not recognizing an area of change that is needed, either internally or external situation. Also, we are not saying that you cannot return up north when the time is right. This is not what is being said. Again, there were certain deceptions that you requested be revealed, and we did so. Also within the self, the mirroring of the brain stem the memories that come out as a result. Yes, there are true memories, but some of the list has been padded to some extent. We're not saying a great percentage. And we're also not saying that old bad memories are not being used against you. Even old good memories are being used against you. Pleasant ones, things that are pleasant to look at, keep you in the past.
Can I ask a question now? Okay, so two things I want to bring up. First of all, I want to jump on the bandwagon that you're on, that Washington State is a beautiful state. Many people can go there and have a beautiful life. Do not even want to say that. We're not putting down Washington State at all. I can tell you myself, there were some very beautiful things that were seen there. It did go through my mind, and I do not want to get into the dirty details of anything. And I feel you guys have not shared a lot with us regarding the dangers there, because of the rate. And you guys took credit for this. You guys said very clearly, you pushed for this thing to reveal itself in a breakneck speed. You pushed for it, which to me, and you were very concerned again about our safety. So I just want to again confirm that, that even though we learned a lot, there are still details that we actually don't know as to the sense of urgency to deal with this matter quickly, to be done with it. Not actually, and again, you did allude to, not only for our safety, but for the safety of the Sasquatch that were there. So I just, I guess I'm just asking you to acknowledge that we actually don't know all of the levels of the particular safety concerns that were really there for us.
Nor do you need to, because we needed to protect our realm, but you only needed to know a small portion in order to protect yourselves. That may sound strange and sound uninformed, but it was not necessary for you to know all the levels of deception that were taking place and levels of oppression that were taking place there in the shadow of that mountain that you sat beneath. There were a plethora of beings that we do not approve of that were there, and a plethora of military activity there that had abilities that you at this current point in time did not know how to combat against. Certain technologies you did not know of completely, or if you know a portion of it, you do not know all of the intricacies surrounding this. Say you are playing a game and you are a level 1. Think of that area that you found yourself in as level 50 to 60. This is the level of onion-layered deceptions that you found yourself within. This is why there were so many things happening so quickly. You were being ushered away from there and having masks revealed in your presence at the same time.
So you just said something that I think is really, again, important to reiterate to people, is that there is not a human on this earth who really understands it all. And as we are even looking back, let's say either looking back on our past lives, our past experiences, again, it can only be brought in, first of all, through our own perspective, but it can only be brought in at the current level of knowledge that you have in your mind. And so there isn't, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I guess I'm talking about the humans that are walking on the Earth's surface more than those that are at our level that are dominating, controlling, that have that in the bag right now. Everybody is still trying to learn and growing and just in the beginning stages of the awareness. Is that fair to say?
Yes, indeed. It may seem like you are very far along, and you are indeed very far along. However, you are not always as far as you believe yourselves to be. This applies to many that are out there in these particular vocations, when you encounter, you would perceive them as enemies that have a greater capacity to harm you, and you wonder how this could be, and you wonder why that particular layer of information was not revealed to you before, is because if it had been, you would not have the same capacity now than you would have. An example of this is some of the bad guys, or you call the A-team, that you have been running into recently. These were not revealed to you because you were cloaked from their gaze. But the more that you seek truth, the more that that world opens up to you, and the more that their gaze looks your direction, and the more that you must grow quickly as a result, not only because of the energies of the Lion's Gate and all these other epic terminology time frames, let's just say. It is also these blockages that have appeared. Not only are the perceived bad guys doing this, it is our kind and your benevolent guides and benevolent source doing this as well, to keep you away from the what you would perceive to be greater A-team. If this is only being revealed to you now in the form of what you would call second generation Orion, or the more intact versions thereof, you're only beginning to see these because you are entering a stage and a vibration and an understanding where you will eventually be able to combat this. Think for a moment if some of these oppressive things had not been occurring to you over the years. Getting to this stage that you are at now with Orion deception at the level that it is being hit with you now, it would be much more difficult to combat, if at all. In the previous timeline for both of you, this particular mental training was not enacted. Therefore, deception hit him hard, and therefore the timeline between you two collapsed when what you would perceive to be as a time reboot took place in that respect. It was decided then by both of you and others that there would be more training in that area of mental harassment. This is why it is not hitting as hard now. This is why certain points in time that the perceived bad guys saw as fixed in that timeline are not fixed at all. They're fluid. They are far more fluid, and you've learned far more in this timeline than you did in the previous jump, let's just say. In the previous time, you're much further ahead, but you still have further to go to completely step out of it. But you are indeed further, and you will continue to do so. But there are particular nuggets of knowledge which were made available to you before that had to be cloaked now until there was such time as certain levels had been conquered, certain walls had been pushed down. This was not only decided by True Benevolent Source, but by yourselves. Granted, there is overage, and this is being dealt with by us getting rid of some of the rogue reptilians and other forces, let's say. And yes, that fight still continues to this day. However, the area that you named Thumb Butte is mostly clear of this. This is what you detected the last time you were up there. The shungite that was left up there was most appreciated because of the fact that it filtered a lot of this mental influence and allowed the earth to have a more absolute set of what you would refer to as antibodies to filter all of this. This is why that particular substance is so good getting rid of programming as well. It also helps to accelerate the getting rid of the layers and getting rid of the programming at an astronomical rate. This is also one of the reasons why it is hitting all of you so fast, is because you surround yourself in that substance. I mean, it is not the only one that does this. It is the fastest one that does this. It is not only just the new energies that are accelerating and also your higher essence doing this, but it is what you surround yourself with. It is all of these points that work in conjunction with each other, and it is no accident either.
So one of the areas that I feel there needs to be, if someone can comment or if you can have enhanced discussion on, because I find it so tricky, and my observations that is knowing when to knowing the point at which something has gone from being informational, something has gone from being useful, to when something now is being used as a manipulation or as a distraction, or like where's that line? And it could be, and again, you brought up about things in the past, of course, and I brought that up as well. So I guess what I'm wanting as consultation is, what are some of the signs and symptoms when you should be concerned? Am I now involved in something that actually is taking a turn, or am I for me it's there's just this lingering hum that begins, and I'm getting uncomfortable. Mine is more of a true uncomfortableness. Now, do I know what that uncomfortableness is from? I can't say that I do. Is it because I'm picking up on something, a wall, a deception that maybe someone else is a part of? Or I could, is in the same breath, be hitting a wall within myself of something that needs to be dealt with that I haven't dealt with. I'm open to either side. I don't always know, but I feel like I would like some, enhanced understanding of what to look for, because I don't want to get caught up in my own programming of being overly concerned when I shouldn't, right? Being too suspicious, like you're saying, accidentally bringing in something from a past that isn't related to now. You need to let it go. But I've really tried very hard. I feel like I've tried really hard to try and look at that. Sometimes I'm still left with those feelings, which means I think this is current present moment. I don't think this is back then. I think this is current present moment, but I still don't know the signs. I still don't know always what to look for.
For one, trust your intuition. If something does not feel right, it usually is not. However, some of these feelings can be contorted by elements of the past mirroring. Now, this could be past lives and expressions, as well as your SSP time frames. This has popped up at least 50% of the time for you. Being overly suspicious, yes, this could lead to paranoia driven by reptilian forces and other demonic entities. Some of the programming that exists within you is an over suspicious nature of all people, but at the same time, the programming will flip, and you do not always see the person for what they are. It is known to flip back and forth, but your true nature consists of you being suspicious of people, but also knowing when to be their friend However, the programming issues that surface can be, you would call, repetitious distraction or repetitious involvement in, how shall we put it, repetitious involvement in the affairs of others, and it comes from a place of goodness, but then the programming amplifies it in an area that does not belong. With him, it is the opposite, not suspicious enough. Even though it is sensed, it is disregarded. Also, programming with him also makes it difficult to hear what can be said and what is being said. Clock watching, as he would say, the unwillingness to continue with, you would call predestined path, but that is an arcane term. The not so willingness to remember protection at all given points of time. And sometimes the blockage of soul and higher essence, you would call it. But with the utterance of these bits of programming, which even now the outside forces try to activate, you both are in a frequency that you recognize at times when these things are occurring, but cannot always stop them from occurring. This bit of ability was not present in your previous boot, let's say, but it is now, and the ability to see it was not always available. You see the hidden. You see the hidden agendas. Both see the hidden agendas. But also the programming can send that askew and to think everyone has an agenda against you in some fashion. Even if it's some small way on their part, it gets amplified by your own programming. That is another method to their madness. Divide and conquer. Bits of jealousy moments on both parts. Dependency issues also arise. This cannot always be a bad thing. However, sometimes the inability to act independently on things, especially in times where it is needed, the togetherness on decisions is always needed, but there are times where independent decisions are needed as well. This also must be actualized completely, not seeming like one is forcing the other into a situation. This was a bit of programming that was added to cause arguments in times where unity is needed. This is true of a lot of people, but with you guys specifically, an extra reinforcement was needed. More attention, or you would say tender loving care was needed in the construction of the programming. Not all quantum aspects of this have been accounted for. Most have. But as you go along and tear down these walls, know what is supposed to be in the present and what you are utilizing in the present and what was meant to drift to the past and be transmuted. Yes, will memories come back on their own? Most certainly, yes. But you cannot force a river. You have to allow it to flow to the point it needs to flow to. Yes, it was an unnatural method that was used against you. But it will have to take a natural one to get it to come back to fruition. a natural flow. Nature. Nature always prevails. Nature will always prevail.
Well, thank you for that great detail. I'm trying to strategize how to deal with certain things coming up, and especially especially with people. And then you see congruencies, you see incongruencies, and so your mind starts wandering. And obviously our personal experiences, we've had some good ones, and then we've had some horrid ones with others. So I've been trying to focus on, because I'm glad you're acknowledging that we're, neither one of us are through being triggered with programming. Neither one of us, and again, I dare to say no one. I can't imagine this completely changing overnight. I believe it's a process of understanding, acknowledgement, and learning the skills to move through it, which takes time to do. So I feel helping people understand what to look for, because besides just a subjective intuition, which is extremely important that people don't trust, there will be objective signs and symptoms. And objective means what you can see in front of you. So my understanding is it will be a combination of both. Hopefully your intuition will kick in, but if you're observant, you will see objective signs and symptoms. And that could be within incongruencies within a person's, let's say, behavior. Those are objective. People will want to make you believe you're making that up or you're seeing something that's not there. But you can literally see objective behaviors and this, that, and the other that other people would agree upon. And then that assists with your more intuitive side. So I can't encourage people enough to become aware. And again, and that's where you kind of bring things in without judgment. I'm not saying judge somebody. I'm just saying objectively look at them and look at what's going on. Be it body language or be it behavior or be it something like that. Just don't judge, because you have no right to judge. Just look, because you're trying to make decisions for your current present moment, what is good for me now versus what isn't, and then what do I do about that. So again, this is not judgment, because people are at all different stages and all different parts of learning, and now hopefully you better understand that there are timed problems, let's say. That you could be getting along with somebody just fine, and then all of a sudden things are falling apart, and no, you weren't imagining things, you were getting along fine back then. But this is something that's been triggered to pop up now as I like to say, as a booby trap. Okay, so all of that stuff occurs, as well as, if I heard you correctly, almost it sounds like something going off in you that radiates now a particular frequency to come in. Did I hear that correctly? It's because, can something be set off in you that again was inserted into you that actually, let's say, draws Draco to you?
Indeed, this will indeed happen, along with jinn and other beings. They can indeed be drawn to you by an implant or by some kind of etheric, you would call hex, but it is a lot more complex than that. Yes, and you can have objects near you that will draw them in as well, that have been enchanted, let's say, to do so. It is the intention of who created it. Yes, and you can have programming within you, thought forms within you that can summon these other beings nearby as well. And the person will wonder why they're being harassed. The bad guys, you would call them, would argue there is consent there, and they would not be completely wrong in that, because of the thought form implant or hex, let's say, that was agreed to, not only in dream time, but in some other time frame that is now surfacing. You're dealing with multi-dimensional beings that, and quantumly understanding beings at times, that know when certain aberrations surface, they consider that to be consent to harass.
So I just think that's important to also understand, because sometimes your life is going along and then whatever. And then the bad news is what is also beneficial is you're going to do all this self-reflecting, wondering what the hell you've done wrong, how you've fallen off the wagon, how you've, I'm now turning into, sliding down when it has nothing to do with that, when it was an implant or it was something that was time to go off in you. And one of the wonderful side effects for darkness is you're going to do all this self-review and potentially self-flagellation that wasn't even warranted, because it had nothing to do with any of that, but it's a desired side effect from negativity. And again, this happens to everyone. No one is beyond this. This is so, everyone that is learning and growing, you are not beyond this occurring to you. No one is yet. We haven't learned it all, and you have to be aware. The other thing I wanted to ask your opinion on is something that I've been giving a lot of thought on to give people a better understanding is compartmentalization, and that even means, when this was being developed, this whole expression, I guess you would say, was being developed. I feel, some of the tactics that are used now were used then. Even in a false belief system then of benevolence. Benevolence would say we don't want to contaminate. We don't want to contaminate what's going on over here by you having too much knowledge about it, because your thoughts could either interact with it or you're planning on experience that, so you can't know too much about it. So benevolence could say something like that, but malevolence could say the exact same thing. And are both true? I think actually both are true, have some legitimacy to it. But I believe there was, in the process of the dynamics of it all, compartmentalization used, that if you happen to be, because many of us are so old, our souls, man, are way old, and we were around and, involved in things like that there are actually many people involved, that there were many compartmentalized groups doing their projects. And if for some reason any of those projects were being, let's say, infiltrated and potentially corrupted, one of the tactics that is used now that I feel was used as much then was being told you were top dog, when appealing to an ego, appealing to that, because that's done now. A lot of military now have been read into certain things, and they're told they're the highest echelon there is. I don't feel that's a new tactic. I feel that's a tried and true tactic that's been used for eons. And so I want to know if you don't mind having a discussion on that.
Indeed, it has been used since the illusion's conception. The term compartmentalizing or compartmentalization was just created by the Nazis, but was created by their forebears, which invaded the system. Also their forebears on Mars. This particular term not only divides up groups of people, but it divides up the military units and soldier units so that they cannot coordinate with other groups. Your current military thinks this is a benefit, but it is actually more of a curse, because if they would coordinate and work together, no one and no group would think they were the tip of the spear. They would have unity in numbers, and they would have unity in ideals against those who created compartmentalization. This is why it was created. This is also looking back into your ancient past. You will see it all the way back to the beginning because it has always been used by these groups.
And so that's important, I believe, to understand, because again, it took more than a village. You always used to try to take a village. To construct this didn't take a little amount of people, a little amount of souls, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You certainly have what I feel are the higher echelons that I don't feel we actually know who they are yet. I don't feel we, the above the Michaels, the McHales, the above them, that there are levels of, hierarchy that we're truly not, aware of yet. I feel there are clogs, my personal opinion, there are clogs up at that level. That's just my personal opinion, and no different than there are clogs down on this level. And we have not really seen it all. We do not know the story. We do not really understand. All we can do, and again, is, I'm just use Chris and I as an example. We can bring in our part of it. We can potentially bring in some experiences and some understandings because of our personal experience within it. But we don't know the totality. I think the totality is going to come in the form of a collage or a puzzle being put together. We add our piece. And then you really get to see how massive this really was. That is my intuition. That is my personal opinion. So I want to warn people, don't get too caught up in yourself, or don't get too caught up in your particular story, because there are so many more that add to a collage of the picture. And I think, I hate to say it, but I think malevolence would love people to get caught up only in their own story, because it helps. It keeps people from growing even more.
This is also so. It is important to know your own story. However, there are some, and there are a multitude of people that get caught up in, say, Atlantis or Lemuria or Hyperborea or Maldek. Any of these stories. Knowing your history, it is most important. Knowing your own personal history so that it can be changed in the now, absolutely most important. To not do so is foolish and a form of internal compartmentalization. However, to get completely caught up in it, you spend time reflecting in the past. You run scenarios in your head of how something could have been changed. Yes, there is a benefit to this because a true lifting has to take place now, to where there was a great fall then, of course. But like with anything, when you become, as you say, too OCD on it, then it becomes a detriment. There is a fine line between knowing your history and reliving it. Reliving it then allows you to stay in the past. Knowing it, and knowing that you were involved in it, and acknowledging its true reality, then helps that energy vent. And yes, you may get the memories back, say in the SSP format of this discussion. Yes, you'll get the memories back, but the energies of that time and the huge amount of, you would call PTSD, will not bog you down in that time. It is important to know these things, but it is not important to always live within them.
And again, that's the human challenge of staying balanced, because there is a balance between past and present. And, how to bring in things that are useful, but how to still be able to move forward instead of being anchored down. And you may not even realize you're anchored down because of the compartmentalization. You think you got it, you think you know it all. You think you got it. You think, stamp of okay, approval, I got it. But you may have a perspective of it, but if you really want to know a bigger picture, you've got to broaden and even be able to hear and understand other people's perspectives, and their perspectives have validity to them, as well. And that's a challenge. I think that is an enormous challenge, because that goes against programming that is so prevalent. Something is right and something is wrong. The basics. So a viewpoint is right and a viewpoint is wrong. And actually, what the truth of my understanding is, and I think others have said, the truth is actually going to be a culmination of a bunch of pieces of a puzzle. And let's forget adding in the Mandela effect, 'cause that skews it up even more. But so it's hard to accept that the truth is more a fluid bubble than it is an exact straight line, and I think that's hard for people to bring in. So again, as far as moving forward, and as far as working on projects, I've been trying to allude to, well, how do you work on things with other humans that are potentially susceptible to all kinds of problems? And I came up with, some thoughts that I think, especially for those getting together working on projects, you may want to consider. I think, that there may be importance to some structure. Not, and I don't mean keeping people from contributing, whatever, but there could be some structure that's needed so that you can maybe spot where there could be something going on in a certain place that, if you pay too much attention to, or if you don't deal with it, can derail you, let's say. So I am always looking for strategies, and that was part of this conversation. Some of the things, and I'm asking for your input, but I know I need to say my thoughts first in order to allow you to really input, are things like having a clear function or goal. What is the purpose? What is the purpose? So, and always looking at what you're doing compared to what is the defined, that you guys, everyone has agreed on, purpose. Are we skewing off a purpose? That's something to look for. Is there a skew going on where, is what's going on within the group or whatever, is there a pull that wait a minute, but we were going to be doing this, and why are we now doing this kind of scenario? So when I think and think about a little bit of structure, I think, having agreement and having a focused attention on purpose, and constantly reviewing what you're doing against that purpose. And again, this is not looking at individual people. This is not judgment. This is not anything. This is trying to stay on course, and what you can do, and to try and stay on course, and what to help you look for when there could be potential problems. So I do want your comment on, because I think it would be helpful for people to know how to move and work within groups now.
If a situation, while you're within working with other people, doesn't always feel right, then it usually isn't. Granted, different people have different tolerances for dealing with distractions. They do not have the same training that you do in this. They may never, or they may advance past you in certain areas. That is their own free will choice. When you're working within groups, it is important to know that in some groups, say groups that work with forest people, or groups that work in alien conventions and such, there's usually one or two people that want to throw certain groups off kilter. This is true of all little organizations that happen within neighborhoods and happen within different groups of importance, such as the aforementioned. But it is important to remember that those agents have never not been there. You are just noticing them for the first time. And people are noticing them for the first time. Noticing certain either inactions or you would call dumb decision making. This is actually more common than you think, and people do get fed up with this particular concept. They know something is wrong about it, but they do not know how to deal with it. Dealing with it is not always paying attention to it. Yes, it is great that you are observing things, but sometimes it must end with that. Sometimes it must end with the fact that you notice the problem and are cognizant that it exists, so that that programming that is causing you to try to create a for and against with that agent, let's say, is being dissolved. Sometimes the noticing of a problem ends the problem. Even if it is amongst friends, sometimes even merely noticing the problem begins to help transform it on the other end. Now, in cases where people are working together on projects, if the circle is not tightened, you would say, this can unfortunately invite people that are trying to weasel their way into projects. We're not saying about anyone currently. We're just saying the reason you were warned about tightening the circle is not out of a selfishness or about keeping projects close to the chest all the time, as some companies and some people out there that do this profession do. We are just saying that keeping the circle too open can invite in people that do not have the project's highest good at heart, very much like these agents that make the dumb decisions. Like, say you create a company and you have an entire board of directors that all own shares in the company, or shareholders. They could easily oust the original creator and hijack its purpose. This is a not so good concept. Keep the circle small for not only your projects but your company. Therefore, you will not run into these agents at all. This is a mistake that is made by many, many companies and corporations that are benevolent at first and have benevolent intentions. They gain people within them that hijack its purpose, these agents. Either you call them inborns, or you call them disruptor agents, or ridicule agents, what have you, whatever tier they belong to. They're a disruption and a distraction and a hijack. To prevent this, as we have said, keep the circle small and know your business and know the intricacies of business, even though it is more difficult with the energy work that you do to not be able to pay attention to these things. Working within the business construct to undo it, keeping the circle smaller is most paramount, because these agents know, or the programming that was forced upon them in that respect knows that if you accomplish the goal with even in a small circle, it gets grounded into the earthly akashic, and the system of disruptor agents collapses. And yes, this can happen with a small group, but it doesn't mean that it changes the other people's will. What it does is it puts it into the earthly akashic and puts it in a position where it can be downloaded by these people, very much like a gigantic file cabinet, where anyone can open this or walk into a library. The library is always and ever expanding. Yes, can it release certain contracts and certain bounds? Of course, because some of these are considered overage. But if that person is bound to this, they are one of these disruptors and should not be in this particular circle. This is not a form of selfishness, not a form of righteousness, and it will be perceived as such by those wishing to turn the tides away from you, but ignore those particular pursuits because it is not correct. The information that is being gathered, the reason we say keep it tighter is because the information must come through outside of the yield and outside of disruptor agents. such as what we have been speaking about and you have spoken about on your lifting show multitude of times. These things do happen, like say these bigger conventions. We will not name any, but if you invite too many in to help you head a convention in the time that you'll create one, they could easily hijack it and try to turn it into a yield form of a cookie cutter, you would call it, to try to acclimate it to the rest. The idea is to get the rest to acclimate to the new way of doing things. Anyone tells you that you cannot be authentic in this, they are put in your path to disrupt you. Being authentic and being sovereign is first and foremost in this, and creating this new form of a convention or new form of psychic fur or whatever form you wish to give it must not follow some of the old rules, the rules of how business is set up. Of course, you have to use that to adapt. But the platform in which it is based upon must be different than the rest. There are others following this new path as well, and you have run across them. However, there is another tier that this can raise up to. There is another level in which this can raise up to. This will help then the rest of them change to it, not you to it. Remember, the most powerful torsion field wins. When conforming to an old way of doing things, you get rid of the torsion field that you are trying to generate. When you create this new one, it must be firm, your flag must be firmly planted, and your intention must be firmly set.
So, thank you, because you, again, have just provided a ton more information about a ton more different things than I was expecting you to. So, I obviously appreciate everything you bring through. I think at this point in time, you know, my only personal concern is, again, part of it is personal, and I don't normally talk too much about personal stuff on here. Part of it is personal because, you know, I think Chris and I are very aware about tactics, you know, that are used, that are kind of the divide and conquer between him and I, okay? And you spoke about that before, so obviously that's a personal concern for me. And, you know, at times, you know, maintaining their relationship becomes more important than, to me, just about anything. Because I don't know why. I feel that, you know, all of the other, but there's, you know, the one of the biggest importance is maintaining the relationship. And also, when we're not in sync with seeing a problem, that's just hard, which actually is what prompted this whole entire evolution of events, I think, over the last few weeks, because this really is something that he and I have to work on, because we're actually not in sync in this. And you've mentioned it, you know, he has certain things and then I have certain things. And when you're trying to work together in something and you're not in sync, you know, you get kind of flustered and you don't know how to cope with it. So, and I think, again, I know I'm just speaking about us personally because this happens to us, but it's replicated millions and millions of times. This is not just us. This is what happens out there, and the difficulties of maintaining a positive relationship and moving forward together amidst all of this being bombarded at you, really. So, and trying to find ways. We're actually lucky because we're doing what we're doing right now. We are lucky, and I know that. We are lucky. I called out. I wanted to talk about this. I wanted this, you know, to be brought up to a bigger discussion, and we are lucky enough to be able to have benevolent beings that care about us and for our highest good, that when we get to a certain level, we can have consultation with them. We are lucky. I'm not even going to say that we're not, because we are, and I greatly, greatly appreciate that. I hope people find this helpful for themselves personally. I don't like to do things and record things unless it's something that's beneficial, truly, truly beneficial to all. So, I appreciate it, but I just want again to turn over the floor back to you to give anything you would like to say to the people that are listening to this at large.
Yes. Just know that thoughts of suspiciousness and thoughts of selfishness, what you perceive to be selfishness, are not necessarily wrong. It's when they go overboard, they can become programming. Know that if you want to keep your circle tight in any projects you wish to create, by all means do so. This prevents certain agents from getting hold. Yes, we know certain mammoth-like projects take a group of people or a small army to conduct. We understand this. Discern who you bring into that circle. We know bigger projects require more people. Just discern who you have within that and their intentions within that. We're not judging anyone currently within any of your projects or out there. We are just saying, keep the circle tighter when it comes to certain projects. We are not saying keep things absolutely secret forever and ever and ever. No. We are saying that in order to work within this system, yes, you need unity. Yes, you need like minds working together. But do not shun other groups that want to keep things slightly locked down. But also do not judge those that are keeping a positive circle of people that they know and trust. Some call this clique-ish. And yes, there can be negative clique-ish agent type groups. This happens all the time. But can the positive and benevolent intended groups have their own circle by which they govern a project? Yes, indeed. With no judgment attached, just observation and intuition and discernment. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was a longie. All right. Put him back up here. Yes, he was correct. We had concerns about this very thing. And at first I never liked keeping a circle tight, because I always felt like certain things need to be shared with a lot of people, and that is true. But when you're working on something that is crucial to get grounded in the earthly Akashic, if you keep it too loose, you do open yourself up to deceptive agents that can come in. I see this within a lot of different groups of many different kinds. It just doesn't apply to Sasquatch enthusiasts or UFO enthusiasts. I've seen it from anything from like war enthusiasts or artifact or history enthusiasts all the way to video game enthusiasts. I've seen it in every single group and interest and demographic type there is. So these agents have weaseled their way in. You may have a person within a group that you're not liking their tactics, or some city official that you're in a council with. You don't like how they're operating things. They just act strange. They do stupid things, make stupid decisions that have no common sense attached to them. That is one of the agents that is a sign of it. Fighting with them will automatically kick in a different type of programming that will always create a for and against. They will get you to look at them and not continue with the project. And I've run into these people my whole life. I've always judged them very, very harshly, which they are aggravating as hell. But what he was saying, if you relinquish judgment and just continue on with the project, and you don't form the for and against with it, yeah, they'll still continue to have that other programming, but it won't be as difficult. And to prevent those agents from coming in, you keep your circle tighter that are working on a particular project, of course, until such time as the project is released and it is put into the Earthly Akashic, of course. But that's what I had to say on that. Do you have anything else, Joanne?
No, I mean, it was a much broader conversation than I actually was expecting, but I'm very grateful for it, and personally very grateful for it because it was needed for me.
Yes, I needed this as well, and we thank the forest people for wanting to communicate. And remember, if you have an edifice laced with shungite like Scrumpy has here, they have said that it is much easier to communicate through such an edifice. It's much less likely to be hijacked by anything or have any sort of overlay to it. I have noticed this with some edifices, they get an overlay to them. I've noticed with shungite-based edifices, they tend not to. That's what I wanted to say on that. So I believe we can end this here. This has been an episode of the World of Sasquatch, an unusual episode of the World of Sasquatch.
But again, one of their functions, actually, when you really get to know them, are good friends and good counsel. So.
Yes. The benevolent ones will speak this way all the time. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.